Thank you. This is welcome to the Fight President podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Fox, and tonight I'm here with my cousin Eagle. We're here at Pechanga. Eagle's doing a presentation tomorrow, Boys with Braids. So he's here tonight. They did a healing ceremony session today, opiate and drug addiction and fentanyl, and that fentanyl thing was kind of. Were you there for that?
Yeah.
They did reenactment on that.
Yeah.
That kind of scared the employees. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
They came running out, but I mean that's something that's going to happen, and that was a pretty good skit there. I thought,
Yeah,
to see that.
It's powerful because it is. I think if you've been in a situation where it's been chaotic and something happened, whether it was violence or whatever it was,
Right.
there is that sense of kind of being afraid or what's going on, not knowing.
Yeah.
And it definitely did. And I've seen other places where it startled everybody too.
Yeah,
that wasn't in the room when it was happening and kind of came rushing in, and your adrenaline gets going and like trying to figure out what's happening here. And yeah. So it definitely is. And I was talking to one of the relatives there, and because I left it partway through, and he was outside, and he goes, man, I just lost my brother to that a few years ago, and I can't even be in there, and because he's still going through that grief process,
right.
And so it definitely is something that's
Albert Tittman, the one who's running it today, he did give a warning. Hey, this is going to trigger. And that was cool. That was good that he did that, because I thought like, oh, it should be all right. What I mean? And then when he did, I was like, oh, damn, it kind of scared me a little bit. But the ones that had dealt with that, or their families had passed away from fentanyl, and they walked out. You know what I mean? They couldn't take that. So I was like, oh man, this is like, again, this is serious that we need to start looking at. And so that was it was good and scary at the same time. To see that and to see, you can revive them, because I guess a lot, now that I think about it, like they think they'll get in trouble if someone overdosed with them, and so they don't do anything about it. And like Albert was saying, it's the law. You can help people or not get in trouble, or something like that. He was saying a law like that here in California.
Yeah, and that's the part again of being prepared in that situation.
Yeah.
There's so much dynamics happening, and that's how we know some of the relatives who've lost their life to overdose to fentanyl. They were around other family members,
right?
And they were scared because they either had a record or they didn't want to be complicit in what was happening, and so they left them there that way, and they passed away. And I think that's the part of trying to understand, that if you are using with somebody or you find somebody like that you can try to offer medical assistance and Narcan or Lanoxin, whatever you have, to try to get them out of it. But even, are you prepared to administer it in a real situation
when they're panicking and screaming like that?
And that's the hard part, is because we're not trained to do that, and so a part of the movement before that was to get our young people trained, or the youth trained, because they're the ones who are going to be the first responders in those situations, because they're the ones that are out together, and then reminding them, like Albert said today, like you won't get in trouble, like you're not going to get arrested, and so I think it's trying to combat what's happening in all forms of saying that, hey, you won't get in trouble, so don't run away. Try to help if you can, and learn how to do this if you're going to be in places where people are going to be using, and And then there's always the conversation of too. Then, like you're allowing people to do it because you're just going to give them Narcan if somebody overdoses to save them.
Right.
And so there's always those two sides, but the preservation of our family is the most important. So I think it's really you got to make your choice, and I think the other relative, Virginia, shared that, where a family member was saved because they were using together, and one took the other one to the hospital, and they saved their life. And so whatever the situation is, you might not know all the facts, like she said today, but don't be so quick to judge, and somebody saved their life, and unfortunately, like she said today, that her relative is going to be in a convalescent for the rest of their life. That's a part of the result of the using and the overdose, not being able to be fully functional again.
And I was telling one of my friends the other day, it was like most of these, because we have two relatives that passed away from that. Most of them are not really drug users. They're just out there at the party, and so the ones that give it to them are the ones that are maybe into, are doing the drugs or whatever. And so you don't know what you're taking. You're just taking, you trust people around you or whoever you're partying with. And so I was telling like some other guys, like they're not real drug users or out. They're just out there having to have a good time and end up taking fentanyl,
Yeah.
And so,
and that's the hard part is it's so little of it can take your life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be a whole bunch. And whether it's put in a drink or it's smoked or however it's gets to you, whether it's laced or whatever it may be, it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part is you can just be there to have a good time and somebody offers it to you and you trust them because there's somebody
Yeah.
maybe you've already had some good times with them.
Yeah.
And you don't think anything, and that can happen. And it has happened to people, that just were in the wrong place with what they were doing, and that's the choice they made, and they're gone.
And this is a big issue in our Native community, but again, it's like that with all other nationalities. It's just that we're 2% of the United States, so it looks we got a high rate, because we're only 2% of the U.S. Population, and so we're going to be the highest in fentanyl. We're going to be the highest in alcohol because we're not that many, and so but a lot of nationalities have the same issues. Is that ours is more, because of how many we have here. It seems like it is a lot.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's where understanding like the data, what the data says, and what it means, and because, like you said, 10 Native people in one tribe could be, 20% of the population.
Yeah, right.
And it looks really bad. You know, where in other communities, that's a small 2% or 1%. And so we really have to understand, like you're saying, how that impacts all of our communities and why the numbers are the way they are, and just to understand, because there is a part of it we have to really, when we're talking about it, we need to be educated, and so that way we're putting out the right message.
Yes, and that also went with COVID, because when COVID came out, a lot of natives had passed, and everyone was in the public was like, well, a lot of people had passed, only like 300 people passed, 300 people is a whole tribe. It could have wiped out a whole tribe. You know what I mean? And so it's just because the numbers for us is very low. A lot of these issues, it's really important for us. Especially again, the fentanyl that we've already dealt with in our family. And so again, it's not it's something that we need to look at. The issue. So, but again, we want to do this episode because we want to talk about Rattlesnake Island and about sacred land. And I always mention to people about Rattlesnake Island, like, Elam is, we're like, we come from the island, we live on an island. All the most eastern, southeastern Pomos live on islands, right?
Yeah.
And so we're island people, and so the sacred land that we have is just the land that we used to live on. And we haven't left our mainland. But the Rattlesnake Island, that's how many acres? How many feet away from that is it from us?
It's not that far.
Yeah,
it's a 15-minute swim at most.
Yeah, yeah. I got my laptop out here. I couldn't find that how far it is, but yeah, you're right. There's that little rock island, and then we swim there, and then swim right to Rattlesnake Island. Right?
It's no more than 70 yards, and I think that's the part too, because we used to try to throw rocks far as we can so we can get them over there.
Yeah, but like I was saying, your dad has lived there all his life, and Rattlesnake Island is right across when he wakes up, and you live there, and Rattlesnake is right across, so it's very significant to us. And but like I was asking you, like, what can we do with that land? Like, is it lost, or can we turn it into, like, I think some people are trying to turn it into a historical park, right? But they lost that, I think. So and is that guy still on there, John Natty, or
no?
On there right now?
He actually passed during COVID as well.
Okay.
And so I think the last we heard is it's back up for sale again.
All
and
right.
So I'm not sure if they said that the price tag was $15 million this time, from a few couple million to now what they're asking today. But I think, like we were talking before, is again that we never signed the land away.
Yeah.
We never did anything like that, and so it's important to understand the foundation that we do have, and the connection. Like you said, because it is something that I see every morning when I wake up and I look across the lake and it's sitting there, and to know that that's where our main village was at, and our ancestors and old people were there. And growing up, being able to go there as a kid and run around, because it was, even though we knew it was in somebody else's name, the title of the land, we always went there still as kids and ran around.
Yeah, right.
And so we knew it was still ours.
Yeah.
But I think helping to understand how we got to where we're at is a part of it, and how it was taken from us. And I think that's a big part of the story, because we don't know.
Yeah.
And now we have the means to do the research and go to the archives and find out how the land was parceled up and taken away, and how the reservation boundaries were formed, and who did that.
Right.
And before, whereas, our grandparents and their grandparents before them, just somebody showed up and said, this is all you guys have.
Yeah.
And they really didn't know why.
Yeah.
And I think it's understanding what opportunities we have available, what means and what avenues that we can look at returning the land back to us in title, not saying, that we gave it up, but that title part of how land is looked at, with ownership in the society that we live in.
And we took, again, we always say like land back, like, what does that mean? And to us, it's like, for me, is like, we want the land back so we could take care of it. So, everything would be okay with that land, because the public or like city officials think that most natives want land to get a casino. And like for us, we just want that land. It's not like we want it ours and we touch it. We just want to make sure we take care of that land, and reading through this paper here, because it was an island, it does say when people passed, they were burned. Just, I'm thinking maybe because they want to bury something like that on the island. And so I don't know, from the paper, it just says that when we went to the mainland, then we started to bury. But the island was burning.
And I think that's, again, a part of our story is understanding what was happening there. And it's important. So when we're talking about our people from Ilem and the southeastern tribes, that we had land ownership and land tracts, family land tracts. And so they all spring from that island in all the directions of our territory. And so when we look back at those family land tracts, we know where we had our rights to gather, to hunt. We know what tracts belonged to our grandmothers, and so that's where we were able to follow those land tracts and live on that land throughout the year. In the certain times of the year up in the mountains, hunting, certain times of the year along the streams to procure the fish and the chai runs, and then on the mainland where we stayed the majority of the year, and on the island where the ceremonies were happening. And so understanding that land use is important. And so when you're saying that about land back, it is about the stewardship and connection to the land and the resources and even it's like those terms, resources. And when you say that, it's like, oh, it's here for everybody to take, but really it was the source of our life and our subsistence, that we lived off of this land and with the land, and had that balance. So it wasn't exploitation of the land. When we say resources, we weren't extracting anything. We were living with the land.
Taking care of the land.
Gathering the things that we needed, but also making sure that we didn't leave a big footprint there, and burning the land and all the ways we took care of it, and that's what it's about, and so when we're talking about that now to counties and the cities and lead agencies when it comes to development and what's happening with the growth, like Lake County's, we're in the 2050, which is the update of the general plan of Lake County, and so it's now finally in 2024, the county's starting to say, oh, well, we need exclusive seats for the tribes to sit on in this planning process, where before we weren't included.
Yeah, right.
On how what's going to happen on the land, and so now we're in a place because of the things that have happened in the past years that county governments and lead agencies are saying we need tribes at the table to be a part of this process. And so again, it's not always what we want or we're not always going to get, but we still have to again talk about and advocate why it's important that we have the access and rights and stewardship of our land, because we never gave it away.
Yeah, and then we will also take care of it for them, and so with water and the land, and make sure things are, like that burning, that cultural burning and stuff like that. It's something that it has to come back, and maybe they're going to figure out one of these days that we were taking care of this land this whole time, not owning it, having ownership, property, or anything like that. It was just something that we were taking care of.
Yeah.
And so, it's now that we don't take care of it, now look what's going on,
Yeah, and that's the part of it is the science is finally catching up with our knowledge. And the TEK, the traditional ecological knowledge, has come out of now the Western communities, and they're going, we need to look at what your people were doing here, because when we got here, it was beautiful, everything was in balance, and we've seen what we've done to this land,
right?
And so now, because their science is validating it, it's that rush, kind of like it's almost like even a gold rush back to we need to do all that what you guys were doing. And the hard part is when you do get involved, then they want to take all the credit for the knowledge. And so it's really it's really a balance you have to have when doing that. And there's 3 of the county board of supervisors positions that are up for elections this coming year, and one of our relatives, Moke Simon, is not running. One of the tribal board of supervisors, he's not running again. But one of the things he said recently is, in regards to the lake getting back to being healthy, is removing the dam.
Right.
And he's got a lot of non-native people against that.
Right.
Because he came out and said, like, we need to remove that dam and this lake will start getting healthy again. But the people who own the water rights and the county next to us are saying, no, we need all the water we can get.
Right.
But at least he's planting that seed, and the person who he endorsed, a non-native man, is saying the same thing. We need to remove the dam. You know, and so it's going to start this thinking again. Well, should we? Do we need to? Will it really improve things? But it just took that one tribal perspective of get rid of the dam. And things will start to naturally get better. We're not going to make it better. The land will take care of itself if we just start removing the barriers and the things that are destroying it.
And then we have, I think they said there's fish in there that's not supposed to be there, that eats the fish that are from that lake. And so I think that takes a toll on the lake itself too. What is it, bass that they put in there?
Yeah, the bass and crappie and catfish. All those predator species that are eating the native fish.
They're eating the roots or whatever, that's in that area. And so I think one of those things too, you got to get, but again, I think Clear Lake makes all that money with those tournaments. And so that's one of their, money makers. So they started to throw all that catfish and bass in there and, eat up all the natural resources there.
Yeah. And that's, some of the tribes' environmental programs have been doing the catfish kill-offs where they're shocking the fish and they're taking and removing them from the lake.
Yeah.
But the ones they can't do is bass, because of that segment of the community who depends on those tournaments to generate revenue for the local businesses. And so there's always that money component. If it's going to mess with our finances, then we're only willing to do so much to get the lake back into balance. And until that is really addressed, we're still going to be doing the kind of band-aids but even like Uncle Nelson would say, he's seen a dozen native species of fish die out in his lifetime, and so that's speaking to the bass and the catfish and crappie,
they eat those fish.
Eat the indigenous fish, the natural fish that are there.
So that's sort of that, like the understanding of people in Rattlesnake Island. I mean, because everybody knows, and the non-natives all know that that's our island. I mean, like on here that they put the report in. I mean, this guy in 1868 said there's an Indian village on this island along the southern shore. These Indians keep horses on the island. They also cultivate a garden spot of acres, a few acres. So again, like they know that's where our home is. But it's just, oh well, you know what I mean? Like there's no rights to that. It was taken. It was just it was kind of just a blind eye. They don't want to either give that to us or they just want someone to buy, make money off it and like you said, sell it for $15 million.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the part of what has happened to us, and even like today we have the Kelseyville name change that's happening, and I know your dad was involved in that when it got started a few years ago of the non-tribal community who are finally at a place where they want to say, we don't want that name anymore. We don't want our towns to be associated with people like that. And so it's generated this discussion about, well, what can we do to help support changing the names of these places? And it's really hard because a lot of times when we're leading it, they don't want to support it, but when it's their idea, they can get more people to mobilize and go, it's harmful. And so it's really that part of, them trying to address what their ancestors did.
Right.
And in the same sense with Rattlesnake Island, there's no, like you said, the account you're reading is proof of we've always been there.
Yeah.
And it's
okay.
Have
horses on there.
Yeah. And it's okay and convenient for them to just erase that when they want to say that, there was nobody here. They didn't live there. And so we can use that to our benefit because the way the country was founded was to benefit, the landowning white male.
Right.
And so they could claim our land through various mechanisms and doing the research to understand, like we were talking about, the doctrine of the discovery and the church and what they did to discover and claim our land. And that's all a part of, again, the story of what happened to us that we didn't know was already in motion, and it's interesting because when you start bringing that up, how the earliest Supreme Court cases and this came out too with the Oak Flat is we're still considered wards and we're still considered less than. That we can't have ownership. We can only have recreational rights. We can't have spiritual or ceremonial religious rights. It's recreational. It's that same idea that they don't recognize our ceremonies as anything but a thing to recreate.
More of a like a barbarian kind of savage kind of thing that we do, that they still see it. And so they see it as that, and so they don't want to acknowledge all that area. But that's something that with Rattlesnake Island, when you were talking about, though, real quick about Kelseyville, I had someone asked me like, what do you think about Kelseyville changing the name? And I said, well, I don't live there, but if you guys want that name after a guy who had slaves and was the reason why they had the Bloody Island Massacre, then like, if you're okay with that, and I guess then keep it. But all the pummels around you, they don't, and where that name comes from. And a lot of them don't know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let me explain to you really quick about this Kelsey, guys. I only gave like a 5-minute, like, what the story is. And they're like, oh, yeah, change it, And so I was like, but a lot of people don't know the story of the Kelsey. Yeah. But there's a lot of other, not only like Kelseyville, but, like when our ancestors came from Comdot, they came to Elam because they got burned down by Salvador Vallejo. Yeah. Right? Vallejo City is named after him. Yeah. And even if you look in the history book, he was like the worst guy ever, even to the United States. He was like, he had slaves, he had like all this stuff. But again, you got Vallejo, the city of Vallejo over there, and so there's a lot of cities in that area that are named after people that weren't great people.
Yeah. And that's, that's the part of the story. And it was interesting. So just like being here and being involved and following, trying to support the name change. And because, we were impacted through our family at Big Valley through Grandma, but it didn't really have too much direct impact on the people at Elam, the Kelsey. Yeah. But we knew about it. And then to hear, we're saying can we have support from other tribes, asking other tribes for support. And it's interesting here at Pechanga, the Pechanga tribe actually wrote a letter about how it wasn't that bad of a thing, what the Kelseys did.
Yeah.
And so I was actually watching the documentary here in the hotel, the tribal documentary. And this casino is built on land the Kelsey family owned that they bought from the Kelsey family.
Yeah. So that's why they were saying that.
So that's why they were saying that. And we didn't know that. That's why they were saying it.
Yeah.
But we don't even know if it's the same Kelsey bloodline.
Right.
And so they were saying, well, maybe like not all the Kelseys were bad, but it's like we don't even know if they're the same ones. But now we know their interests. That's how they bought the land to establish what they have here today.
Okay.
As a part of it. And so it's really interesting to know those dynamics and even where that loyalty can be, because these white men sold them that land for them to eventually prosper from it. So so it's not too bad for us, but for you guys it might be horrible, but we don't want to really be associated with it.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know. I mean, I guess you could, when you think about it, the Kelseys, they were buying land here and there and selling it, pretty wealthy off that, and then also with the Pomos, keep them as workers.
Yeah.
And so then came Bloody Island.
Yeah.
And that was one of the worst things that happened on that in Lake County, and that's we got cousins that are affected from that. And that's why I want to always bring up Rattlesnake Island, because like I said, we fight for Oak Flat, and this is used to be ours, and and a lot of people don't understand that. And like we have our own with Elam, with Rattlesnake Island, and then we also have the mine. And every time that my uncle asked me to come and talk, once in a while he'll ask me to come and talk, to the people, and I always say the same thing, like, you think it's gonna, like they're gonna pollute your land and your water. You think, oh, that's a long time from now. It's not, because they did that to us. They did that to us, and we can't even swim in that lake area or do stuff like that today. Our kids can do what we did. Yeah, you know what I mean. And so I tell the public of like Superior, like, you guys are gonna pollute your land. The tailings that they're gonna lay is gonna be somewhere where it's gonna toxic the air, and it's gonna get in your lungs, like and so I try to put that out there because you didn't understand what I'm trying to tell them, how we dealt with that Elam, and what the smell that we had and all this. I mean, I would think we would be like the first mining people, that tribe that was affected by a mine. I mean, because that thing came out in like 1872, or even before that. So again, that's just one of the things I always try. With Oak Flat, that's the mining. I always try to incorporate ELM, because that's kind of where it started from, and what we dealt with and we're still dealing with today, right? With the land being polluted.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part is the narrative of the how much we can make, how you can improve your quality of life, but really you're poisoning your own self when it comes down to it. And I think the easy part for the non-tribal community is they don't really consider themselves maybe being there for hundreds of years to have 4 or 5, 6, 7 generations stay within that same area, because they've picked up and moved over and over again. And that's like the history of the Kelseys. They got run out of Kansas for committing land fraud out there, and just came west and did it, and so it's that same behavior to get over on the land and the resources. And when we look at it, it's like, again, like you're saying, this is going to be the same result that you guys are getting railroaded into without knowing the consequences, because you don't see it, and it's not right here in maybe the state or nearby where you live, but it's like you said, it's already happened in all these other places. And why not look at the examples of what can happen based off of what has been done? And there's no way to do it clean. There's no way at all for there to be clean mining. Right. And that's the idea of again, there's going to be fallout, whether it's the tailings, the pollution of the groundwater, the aquifers, the wind blowing the dust around. Right. There's all these potentials for exposure that you don't hear about, because they talk about the money, the benefit of the the economics and the income and generating capital. That's all you hear.
Yeah, right.
And but we're saying it's safe.
Right.
But it's really not.
And they keep using the word clean energy, and again, I had said that in the last episode when I went to see my uncle talk, and he was talking about we're against clean energy, like the natives are against the clean energy because we're trying to stop all this other stuff, and he put it in a good term, like there's energy, and that's Pepsi. And then you got clean energy, which is Diet Pepsi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's, either way, they're both not good. And so then by saying clean energy, it makes it sound better. But again, it's not. And we have all this technology going on, and it's just something that I always try and bring to the table about Elam, about Suffer Make Mine, about how we lost Rattlesnake Island. And one of the greatest things that we had as growing up is our family, like our grandfather and grandmother, we're kind of like the first time activists. They go fight for they storm Rattlesnake Island. They helped storm Alcatraz, and our grandfather went to the Capitol. And so that's in us. So that's something I'm very proud of. And also my mom who got arrested with Dennis Richard Oakes in Oakland. So that's always been in our family. Your dad did the same thing too, and my dad, like, that's always been us, that to fight for land or fight for rights. Yeah. And so when we do it, I always love to bring it up. Oh, my grandfather did this, my grandmother did that. So it's nothing new to us.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like when your family's been doing that before. It was the term activist, and before it was the water protectors, and all of the terms. Like our family was involved in. And I think that's the unique part of, again, understanding how this was done. And like when you look at how we were dispossessed of the island, all it was is the land surveyor coming out and not knowing the history that our people lived over there. And so he just surveyed the mainland, and that was it.
Right.
And that's how the acreage of the island was not included in the reservation.
Right.
And that simple mistake led to us not having access today, us not having that in trust. And so that's a simple mistake that I shouldn't say simple. It was a mistake that was made, whether it was intentional or not. That's what we don't know.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you should have some idea of where our people were at when you came there, to start forming those boundaries. But then it goes back again even further to how our land was sold before the reservations were even made.
Right.
And they had to come back and buy that land, that we were living on.
Right.
And so there's all of these things that were hidden away from our people that we have access to now. We can get online and start doing a lot of research from home, where before they had to take a trip to go and try to find this information.
Yeah. And nobody get permission.
Nobody's saying this is where it's at. And this
letters.
is how you find it. They had to go through that whole process of, asking the right people, waiting for letters to get in the mail and responses to come back. And so I really think about, like how you're saying, if they had the means we have today, they probably would be a lot farther than we are right now.
Yeah, right. If they had the tools like that, they would have been there, because they were really going for it, and they almost had it. It just didn't have enough publicity about it. Like today, it would have been all over. I mean, people would have been sharing stories, and all this stuff would have been going on. But they tried, and they even stormed like Middletown area, that area too. They were trying to get that land. So our family did try to get land back, and so when I always bring up the history of our family, I'm all, I said, this is in us. This is what we do. We've never stopped. But again, we live on toxic land, and when we talk about Oak Flat, I'm always like, this is what's going to happen to you if you let this happen, And so you're right, though. I never thought about, like the non-natives. They always seem they're not going to be in the one spot, and there's some there that are really, really love their home. But there's only a few. There's Moses. Oh, I'm moving. I'm retired to Green Bay when I'll be a snowbird. When I get older. So I guess you're right. They don't think about generation to generation living in that spot like we do.
And I think that's the part, and the big difference is we want to be in our homelands. We want to be there, And yeah, we like to go different places and travel, but we always eventually at some point come back to our homelands.
Right.
And I think it's hard for the non-native community to do that unless you have those families who have been there for a while and came and they kind of put their roots down, and so they have that investment of saying, yeah, we are going to be here. You know,
Right.
we have a history here, and I think that's the hard part is at some point you start to become allies with them after they were the ones telling you, oh, we're just as native as you because we've been here for 150 years too. You know,
right.
We should have the same rights as you because we've been here for a while. But
Yeah.
and that's where it's like hard because sometimes you gotta like make those alliances with people.
There are some good non-native allies. You know, there's some really really good ones.
Yeah.
And you know, I wish there were more, but there are some really good ones that will come and help. Especially when my uncle go for Oak Flat, there are a lot that come and support. I don't see that much here when we try to out in California in the LM. When we try to go for things, but it gives us hope that with all these other tribes getting land back, we hear they're getting land back, they're getting the coast back, or this part of the beach back. Like, well, okay, when we had a chance to get Rattlesnake back, just because a lot of tribes are getting land back.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of the times too is even the last descendants that are living of the Kelseys are a part of wanting to change the name.
Right.
And they're sharing that, for all these years, we've kept it secret that we're the descendants. You know, the names have changed.
Yeah.
But they still keep it secret because they don't want to be associated with their family history. And so now one of the descendants that still lives there, she's the one who's a part of saying we need to change it. And and the ironic part is the people who lived there who have no blood connection to the Kelseys are the ones now screaming at her for why are you trying to change the name of our town?
Right. And a lot are like, this is my home, it's all I know is Kelseyville, oh come on. Like, I mean, that I was like, wow, I'm glad I'm from Elam because I don't worry about name change, But there's a lot that are against it, and it's crazy when you say, like, tell them the story of why they want to change, because of the Kelsey, and they're like, yeah, but I've been there a long, like you said, I've been here forever. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? No, it's not.
And that's the hard part. I think the younger generation now too are more about trying to understand what happened so they don't make those mistakes. And even so tomorrow at Kelseyville High School, for the last week they've been doing a mural project to put a mural up about MMIW and the native presence in that area. And so there's actually youth from the Kelseyville area that's come up and helped out. And they've been saying for the last few years, it's not us who are holding on to this, it's our parents who can't let go of those names. Yeah. And so they want to disassociate themselves, the younger generation, with it because they realize, because they have access to the history, that we can look at it and go, man, that's not good. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. Right. And then for them to say, like, it's our parents are the ones who are stopping it from changing or out there trying to stop it, and I think that says a lot to the growth of us as people, to say like, it might not have been me that did this to your people, but it is wrong and it needs to change. Right. And versus going, oh no, like you're attacking our town name. And it's not really that from the younger generation. It's like, let's correct it. Right. And which is positive.
How long has it? I mean, when I was there, when I used to go, when we played against we were in Lower Lake or played against Kelseyville. We didn't like Kelseyville. We always tried our best to beat Kelseyville High School. But I remember about the name. But when did it really come up about changing that name? Was it recently or?
Yeah, so it started in the movement to change the mascot, the Indian mascot, was about 2002.
Kelseyville Indians.
Yeah, the Indians mascot. And it started there. And within the last 5 years was the first time I heard talk about it and so I just recently got involved with trying to find out who are the people. There's a group called Citizens for Healing who've been trying to organize to change the name. The first kind of part with the mascot was mostly Clayton Duncan, and wanted to change the name and going to the school board and finally getting it changed. And then it moved to down the road, well, let's talk about that. And he was even saying the name at the time, but it was kind of like, we'll concede the Indian mascot. They still fought for that,
right?
But it's kind of like, we'll concede in losing, we'll give up the mascot,
right?
But we're not going to change the name at that time. And so I think that's the part, is there's been the discussion, but the real movement has happened within the last couple of years that I'm aware of. And
what's the name now for the high school?
They go by the Knights.
Okay.
Kelseyville Knights.
Kelseyville Knights.
Yeah, so that's their new mascot. And the ironic part is, like, the middle school still uses the Warriors, but they haven't done the mascot, the dressing up.
Right.
They just use the Warriors, and they've kind of removed the mascot part of it. But yeah, the high school is not associated with it, but you still see people, the Kelseyvillans, I call them, that wear their Kelseyvillian stuff around still.
Just because.
Yeah, just because, especially right now, they'll break out all that old stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. That's and it's tough because it always happens in a small town, and there's and so you can feel a lot of tension in a small town.
Yeah.
And for them to do that, it's a lot of tension. It's got to be in that area.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part is there's no denying. You can go there and especially now, that's the talk everywhere. As soon as you walk into a place, they see Indians, it's like they either hush up or they talk louder about the issue that's happening right now. And so I know when I pass through Kelseyville and I have to stop or get gas or whatever, it is, you can feel that,
right.
And it was interesting because they were asking, some of the people were asking me, well, what do you know about the village sites here? And because from 2010 to 2018 I worked at Big Valley and did some of their tribal historic preservation work, and got to sit down with Uncle Nelson, and he told me a lot of the names of the old villages, and so I started sharing that, that there's these names, and so he said something really interesting in a recording I was listening to, and he said, he goes, erasing our history is not good. He goes, what these guys did to us, we need to know what happened. And he goes, and if we're really concerned about these names, he goes, we should change our last names to our Indian names. That's what we should do first. And then go and change Kelseyville.
Right.
That was his perspective in 2002. That if we're talking about us healing, reclaim our names.
Right.
And so I mentioned that. I said, it's crazy. I've had these language CDs of Uncle Nelson, and I've listened to them, and for some reason this one I didn't hear, and I happened to listen to it, and that came out, and I was like, I'm going to share this and see what people say. And so I shared it with the native group that's working alongside, and they're like, oh, well, that's not an issue right now, we want to do the name, and if people want to go that far, they can,
right.
And so they're uncomfortable, and I go, here's the elder saying, if we want to heal and be well from these things, we got to look at ourselves too. And so it just reminded me of his perspective, and so I said I wanted to share that because I knew it would kind of make people think.
Yeah, and that's when I was in one of the sessions today in this conference, I think that's one of the things that Albert, Tippman had said. He said, in every tribe, there's always an elder that nobody listens to. I thought, oh yeah,
yeah,
that's true. We don't. There's some really elders out there that we don't want to listen to.
Yeah,
and so there's some, where I'm in Arizona, and then of course here, in this area too. But yeah, he said that the other day, today. I thought, oh yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, and it's hard because, for this long time, even our own people have been trying to do good advocating work, and when they don't know their history or their language, and then you try to tell them, you really upset them because they felt like they've been doing all this good stuff. And we're not saying you didn't do anything good, but it's like sometimes the history is wrong, and so we got to make sure we're talking about the right history and what the names are of the places, and so even when the name, they want to change the name to Konocti, and when we started saying, well, that's in the Elam language, that's the southeastern Pomo word, and the word for the mountain in the eastern Pomo language isn't that, but then we had to remember that they already used Konocti Vista for the casino.
Yeah.
And so they've already borrowed that word,
Right.
And so it was, just kind of us thinking, well, if this is what you guys want to do, then that's okay.
Right.
But then, Uncle Nelson had mentioned a few villages in that area, and so I shared the names of those places, and Nonapoti was one of them where our people used to live, and it was called that because the earth was so dark there, and they would use the earth to paint up with in ceremony.
Yeah.
And then the other one he said was Dabadano, which is something to do next to the mountain.
Right.
And Dano is the word for mountain in the Eastern Pomo language, and so again we're out there doing this, and then we find out it doesn't match up with the language.
Right.
But it's okay. It's still better than it being the name it is.
And that's what I was talking about. Like you just mentioned with the language, is like the native language and all languages. It's all verbs. Like you were just saying. It's because it describes a certain part of this land. So that's why they call it that. They didn't call it. There was like no nouns. There's always a way of something being described. So it was verbs. And so. The language is really, like I was telling you before, like you'd say, what does Batsulwin mean? Oh, it means eagle. It probably meant something more than that, but it probably described an eagle.
Yeah.
But, today, now I just went straight to, like I was saying, they got to dumb it down for English.
Yeah.
English is not a great language, so they dumb it down for English. And that's how all these translations came across. So that's another thing that's good that what that word means by describing that area of the land, because a lot of people just say, oh, that means rock.
Yeah.
Or that means,
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. And I think that's the part I like too, when we're on this, this journey, and even with what we're doing here with the wellness and healing work, is understanding that those are parts of that too, and trying to understand the best of our ability, exactly like what you're saying about what those words mean, and how we saw ourselves, and what our connection to the land was. And I think that's a big part of what I've heard today in some of the sessions we were in. The Red Road session we did with the men is a lot of the younger men, their early 20s, don't have an identity, don't have a connection to their purpose, because they've been moved around and haven't had opportunities to go to ceremony, and culture's not intact for various reasons, and that's a part of this picture again. And even I know here at Pechanga, they were in a battle maybe 20 years ago with one of the big companies in California that gets a lot of major construction contracts, and they wanted to destroy some of their sacred sites so that they can mine the rock for roads. And the tribe had to take them to court and end up having to pay millions of dollars to get the land back, and which they did because they had the resources to do.
Right.
But then again, it's like that same thing that not everybody has the opportunity, because they might not have the resources, but then to know that this is a part of, again, that journey to be well and to be able to connect to the land, and when you see some of the stuff that's up on the land, it's beautiful,
right?
And so it's important, like we're talking about the island. There's some things on the island that are quiet has kept some of the history, and there's a lot documented too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are also places over there that are kind of not really known by the mainstream and the anthropologists who came, and so there is a reason for it to still be considered sacred, and the effort to get it back.
That's why, like, when I say stuff on here, I always make sure I read it from a public place where I can say it's in public. I mean, it's not like I'm saying, but the things that, like, me and that we've seen, it's something that I can't bring up because people do ask me like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Well, I really can't tell you. And again, people say, well, that's gatekeeping. Well, it's not really gatekeeping if you're not. If somebody from a different tribe asks me why my tribe does this, I don't tell you, that's not gatekeeping. Yeah. It's just you're not from here. Yeah. So I can't tell if you were from here, you would know. Yeah. That's the thing. So again, like you were saying, just the youth doesn't have that connection in with the land, or they're starting to learn. And so again, I was telling my friend, like, sometimes I come off a little like and I don't mean to, I come off a little cocky or arrogant about certain things, but again, like I always said before, I thought like we were all like this at the time. Like, I thought people grew up like the way we grew up. Until I got older, then I realized like, oh shoot, like not everybody was as lucky as I'm very lucky to grow up in a very cultural family. Where we had dance groups and ceremonies like since we were born. And so there's no like our connection was always there. So then I come across like that, and then I'm like, oh, okay, oh, well, let me, help, help the youth understand what it does, but sometimes I do come off a little like that.
Yeah. And I think that's the part is understanding the difference, like what you're explaining. And there was a lot of stuff too that we didn't get told just because we weren't of the age at the time. Right. And I think it's important for everybody to know that you don't have to know everything, and you shouldn't be expected to be afforded all of that knowledge. If you're not from there, you weren't born and raised in this, and I think that's the hard part, is because we want to have the rights of the society and access to everything. Right. And there was places we didn't go because we weren't maybe a certain stage in our life. Yeah. There were things we didn't do because we didn't earn that yet. And I think it's hard now when, we get back to that conversation of the gatekeeping or culture being a free-for-all, that I could just jump in anywhere I want, and pick it up right then and there. And like you were saying today, like if you're 40 trying to figure this out now, you're 40 years behind, Yeah, right. And so that's the hard part is people just want it right now, and it doesn't work like that.
Like, it also goes like, let's say, for example, like for me, you were lucky, because your dad was a shakehead dancer. I think he was probably the only one that really did shakehead, because came out. My dad was a singer, and our uncles, they did a lot of stuff, drumming, so everyone did one. But like for me, when I started out, I probably was 3 years old in that video that we did Hopland. We did the Hopland thing. Yeah. I didn't get my own rigging, so I was probably about almost 18 years old. I mean, it took me a long time to finally, we did a lot of dancing. Yeah, yeah. And it took me a lot of time to finally get my own riggings. Yeah. And so today, like you were just saying, everybody's want that rigging right now. Yeah. It took me like 15 years to get that, you know what I mean? And a lot of dancing and a lot of getting yelled at for the way I'm not taking care of the feathers. Yeah. But it's just something that I can't teach you one day to, right now. Yeah. You're going to have to go through all that to understand what I'm trying to tell you, because other than that, you're just gonna get out there and just do whatever. But again, it's just I can't teach you what I've been learning all my life.
Yes, yes, and that's the part of it's humbling. People just need to be a little bit humble and recognize that, and if they're willing to put the time and the dedication into it, they'll get there. You know, but I think that's where the times of today of trying to be status of I'm this, I've learned this, or somebody taught me this, and then we have like all the and I hear it still, the name dropping and who taught me this, and and like it's,
he taught me that. Oh, okay, then you're right.
And I'm not I'm not worried about any of that, and to me it's like if that's if you're what you're saying is and who taught you, like it'll show by the way you live. Right. And that's the hard part, is people just want to tell you all their business, and I don't want to know that. Right. Like that's, if it's making you a better person, good for you. Right. But I don't need you to like give me your credentials and tell me this is who's helping you. And
that's what, like I was saying earlier today, it's like for me, like if someone was doing something, let's say I don't agree with, I don't really say nothing. You know, there's nothing I can do. Who am I to say anything?
Yeah.
You know. But when it comes, I told my friends today, like, now if Eagle was doing something wrong, I'm gonna tell him.
Yeah.
We're from the same tribe, same family. I'm telling him, like, because I have that right.
Yeah.
But any other tribe or any other whatever people are doing, I don't say anything. I'm not, you know, who am I to tell them? I'm not the police, you know, tribal police. You know, I'm not gonna cultural police. I'm not gonna go over there and tell them that, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
You know, but again, if it was my own tribe, then I would say, okay, wait, let me talk to them. Then, you know? But again, like you said, everybody wants to get a status or do something, and I just, you know, when you're like me, I just kind of sit back and like, okay, you know, look, this is where I'm from. So I mean, you know, if you guys do that, okay, but that's what we don't do. I'm not saying you can't do it.
Yeah, and that's the part too. Like you're saying, that's our responsibility to say something when it's like that.
Yeah,
when it's in our family and a lot of times it's hard because, you know, people expect you, especially if they know you've grown up, they want you to try to point out everybody that's doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And they try to get you to side with them. And like you're saying, it's like, you know, it's not our place to say anything.
Yeah.
But when it is, then we'll do that. You know, and that's the part is it's okay, and we know we should expect that from each other, and that's what accountability is within our family.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times we don't see that other places, but when people know, they try to get you into their conversation about somebody, you know, what they're doing, and so you just gotta. I just sit there and sit back and just kind
of. If they got some kind of permission, or they dreamt that, and that, you know, I don't know. Yeah. So why would I, you know, say no? You can't be doing that. You know, I have no reason to say that. So, or no right to say that. So as long, again, if it's not us, our family, then, you know, let them do what they want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of just like that reminder of it's okay, and they got to deal with whatever they're doing.
Yeah,
you know, it's not
whatever medicine they're doing. They got to deal with it.
They're the ones responsible for that, and I think that's the part of just, you know, remembering that, because it's easy to get into that group of people who that's all they want to do. You know, it's easy for them to drag you into that, and sometimes you just gotta get up and walk away, or just keep quiet. You know? And so it's interesting, you know.
I'll say to you, or you'll say to me. Other than that, it goes from there.
And I think that's one of the things I see, like even in what's happening this weekend is you have a lot of people who are struggling to like get healthy and get well and get off of the things that are harming them, and a lot of times they are the ones saying, oh, well, I go to this and I go to that, and this is who helps me out, and this is what I got permission to do, and a lot of times, like, I'm not even going to be around when you're doing that, so like, you don't need to be telling me all that, you know, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, you'll be good, it'll help you, but if you're not, you're gonna make this harder for you know, make your life harder, and sometimes it's just that part of what's been missing, and that's always the reminder. Like I get set in some of these rooms and in these circles that I'm thankful that I didn't have to go through a lot of that, because we had solid elders and grandparents and people who were around. And to see the ones who don't have it and are just hungry for it, you know, hungry to learn something, hungry to have something, and something good, you know. That's what a lot of the men said today. You know, we have no good examples, and so we're looking and we find more bad examples than we do good. You know?
For example, like if I had somebody who's not from Elam or Pomo, and we have our own doctoring, you know, like helping, and if someone like from a different tribe or who's trying to find their way, or a person that is not native, say, hey, can I go there and get prayed for because, you know, I'm sick? And I one person did that to me, and I was like, well, what tribe are you from? Like, and when they tell me, he goes, well, you should go to your ceremony and try and see what they can do, because what we do here, I don't know, you have to learn this whole, you know, culture first before the blessing, but you know, where are you from? Do you have a medicine man in your area, or do you guys have ceremonies? Because one of my first things is always, you need to go to ceremony. You know, like whatever ceremony you have in your tribe, go to one. And that's always my first go to. Like, go that first.
Yeah.
And then find out what you can do. You're trying to find your spiritual. And if not, then okay, we'll try to do something. But other than that, you got to go home first. Go ceremony or do something.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of it too. Is when you look at and you hear the stories of people, is a lot of people aren't in their homelands.
Right.
They're in other tribal areas, and they do, go there first. But if you're really gonna like think about, if I go back in my family and we didn't have all of these struggles, where would I be at?
Right.
I would be in my tribe's homeland, wherever that's at. And we would be doing these types of things to keep in balance and in ceremony for this and that. And you'll get a better understanding. But now it's like kind of like, I'm going to find something and I'm going to go do that. And that's what I'm going to do to fill that emptiness that I have. But that's why I always like exactly what you're saying is encouraging those people to go back there first. Right. And if not, then that's when people can say, we can help you until you can get back to where you need to be at. Yeah. And not go, oh yeah, you need to follow this way all the rest of your life. Yeah. It's, no, we're going to point you back to your homeland and your people. Yeah. And if you got it there, and if you got to find it there, that's what's really going to help you in this long run of changing your life. Right. For all of the good reasons. And I think that's the hard part is a lot of times we have the pan-indigenous and those terms, and people think it's like okay. And I said that today. I said there's a lot of things I've learned. I go and they had a little setup with medicine on it, and the little altar and a drum and a gourd and I said I would never pick up that gourd without permission. Yeah. I wouldn't just go and grab it and I'm gonna use this because I don't know anything about it. I know what it is. Yeah. I don't know how it got to the people who use it. And I said the same thing. I respect the hand drum. I respect those items because I know they're sacred. But that doesn't mean because I sing I can just go pick anything up and use it. You know, it's like I would be disrespecting even what I was taught if I went and did that. And so I was just like trying to caution people to remember where you come from, remember your roots, and go back there first. Exactly what you're saying. Go back there first. And that's where you need to be to get what you're looking for. And if not, then we can help out,
Because we're like, I read, I forget that one of these, doctors that were talking about like, we're all indigenous, we're all native, but we're all different nations, and so we all do things differently. We all have the same our creation stories are all different, but one of the creation story, mostly all creation stories is like Mother Earth was already here when we showed up, because the Christians is always like God created Earth, and then but for natives it's like Mother Earth was already here, and then we were brought here. Like Turtle Island and stuff like that, and so that's always got to remember about about when you want blessings or you want to learn things. We're all different, really different people. It's like Germans wanting to be British. You know what I mean? And it's like they're different nations. And of course we're gonna all support each other, but just to remember that you got to go home first. Because you need to find that out. Because we can't help you on this side. On this level. But hopefully they understand again. Like I didn't want to be negative about somebody and say, oh, you don't know. No, go check your area first. Maybe they'll help you there. Because you're from there, or you have a part of that in you. So that's one thing. Like today was pretty good to hear about everybody trying to heal and get their culture back and things like that. And I'm happy for them. But again, what we can do for them is we can't do it with much. Is they have to do. We can't just teach them and give them the class and then you give them certification. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's when we sit there and look at it, it's that's the big buzzword. culturally appropriate service. And that's the term that everybody throws around, or integrating culture, and that's what's sending everybody back, in this healing movement and this wellness movement. It's directing people back, but the ones of us who've grown up in it, we know that already,
right?
And so it's hard when you do have that people and that rush of people who want to just be involved in something, and it don't even matter where it's at. I just want to be there. I want to be involved because I need it. And so you kind of lose sight of where you come from, who you are, what your identity is, and how you can help yourself. And a lot of times, when I talk in some of these meetings and I share, it's always a part of like your homeland is important in your well-being. If you want to heal yourself at some point, if you're disconnected from your land, you need to go back and start a relationship with the land. And maybe the things that you're looking for will come to you there. I go and I go, so like for me, I go, if I'm coming down here to try to understand or get spiritual about home, like I'm not doing it in the right order, but it's hard because a lot of us haven't had that, and we just are trying to cling on to whatever we can find, and it's become like the normal thing. But it's always reminding everybody, like, if you know people who have been doing this, go seek them out.
Right.
Go find them. And if you're not around them and you can connect to other people, that's good. But don't like force yourself to be accepted into something maybe that you're not supposed to be.
And I can't remember the doctor's name. He's like I was saying before, he's Lakota Osage, but he had watching this thing on YouTube where this they didn't show the speaker, but it was a non-native, and asked like the questions at the end of his speech, and they asked like, how can I learn about what's their Sundance? How can I learn the Sundance? Because what's the best way to get involved in the Sundance? Because I want to experience that because of all I've experienced. And he or she was naming off like, I sweated at this tribe. I did it with this tribe. I've been in this tribe ceremony. So how can I get involved in your ceremony? And he goes, he goes, what's the most respectful way to be involved? And he goes, I respectfully say, don't come. And he's like, oh, why? And he's like, because what you're doing is called, we call it spirit scalp collectors. And I was like, oh, dang, He goes, you're just borrowing everybody. He goes, your spirit scalp collector. And the guy just kind of got quiet. He goes, okay, and he sat down. Like. But that was like, to me, I was like, there's a lot, and not only non-natives, but there are some natives too that try to go all the things like that. Like no, just go to yours. Unless you're married, like for you're in one family. Like, if I was married to Osage, then I'll learn that. You know what I mean? But other than that, I have no reason to get into the Seminole tribe and learn their stuff. I'm intrigued by it, but it's disrespectful for me to go over there and join it. You know what I mean?
And especially to invite and welcome yourself, into somebody else's somebody else's ceremonies and into their land, and I think that's the hard part when like dealing with even today some of the clinical professionals that came, the doctors that came, and then they say, oh well, I went to White Bison and I went to this training, and so I'm integrating your guys' culture into my work. But we're going, hey, there's all these different tribes. How are you going to say that? That you're integrating our culture into what you're doing. And you're not making an accurate statement. But in your mind, you think you are because you still see us as all the same Indians. We're
all the same.
And I think that's the part of, what can happen sometimes when people not of the culture are intrigued. They want to know. They want to learn, because I think it comes back to that same mentality of we're going to be your savior. We're going to say we have the professional knowledge, we have the degrees, we've done this, so let us learn about your most intimate things, and then we can help you guys get better, and, and that's like the part sometimes it's hard to listen to some of those who come from that professional realm to come into these events and talk and be honest and transparent. And because at the root, they don't know how our communities and tribes work. And so they think they can just broad stroke everything.
Right.
And it doesn't do a service to those of us that are different. You know, we are related. We see each other as relatives, but we all come from different teachings, different ceremonies. And you can't just use a broad stroke and say, I'm doing all that for all of you guys.
Yeah.
I've learned this teaching from this book, and they studied your people, or it's your people's teaching, and I'm going to apply it in everything. And it just doesn't work that way. And it's hard to get people to realize that you're doing us a disservice.
Right.
When they think I'm doing this great thing, I'm learning about you guys. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, no. Yeah. No, don't do that. You know what I mean? But again, we won't make this session long, but we got a lot more to talk about. Yeah. But, you know, tomorrow is going to be the Boys with Braids. That's going to be good. Maybe we'll get another session in tomorrow night because we're here till Monday.
Yeah.
But just, you know, some things that, you know, I think the community does a great job. You know, whatever people are trying to do to find their spirituality, like, yeah, I'm all for it if it makes you a better person.
Yeah.
But again, like, I have my own way of doing things, and, you know, I always just say I can't teach you that unless you're part of this tribe. And we're very lucky, like, for Elim Pomo is very kind of secret society kind of thing. And I'm very lucky to come from, you know, my mom's side, Apache. They're the same.
Yeah.
Because, like, the people in Arizona, like, the Hopis don't want to know the Navajo stuff.
Yeah.
The Navajos don't want to know the Apache stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, they're and we're all neighborly.
Yeah.
And so, and then Pomo is like, so I'm very lucky, you know, that I have those two tribes.
Yeah.
That I'm not worried about what they do or they do.
Yeah.
I only worry about my tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the Elim Pomo is the same way. And so I'm very lucky to have that. And then, you know, especially having you around, but it's just something that, again, I'm very lucky, or we're very lucky to be in the kind of, you know, culture or family we are in. And it might come off a little, like I said, come off a little arrogant maybe at times. But again, I don't mean to. It's just, I just thought everybody knew, you know.
Yeah, and that's the part. It's just trying to be helpful when the conversations are happening.
Yeah.
Like, you know, trying to provide that perspective, and we can't help it because that's what our elders did.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And that's how they talk to people. And, and it was with good intention to make sure people aren't harming themselves. And,
right.
And so, yeah, it can come off, you know, some way to certain people, but it's only if you take it that way too.
Yeah. All right, Eeks. Well, thanks. We'll do another one again. And again, a lot of people like these open discussions that nobody doesn't really want to have. And we'll just keep going until, you know, someone tells us, hey, what are you guys doing? We talking like that.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, we'll see you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good, brother.
All right.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us, or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram, there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys listen to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you could do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.